Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, December 13th. Congressman Jim McGovern joins us from Washington. Let's go on the record. The chairman of the House Rules Committee adjusts to a very different game on Capitol Hill. With the Trump era ending and the Biden administration about to begin, can a deeply divided Congress find common ground? The chairman gavels in.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR. I'm Ben Simoneau, along with News Center 5 political reporter Janet Wu. Ed Harding's off this morning. The COVID-19 pandemic again dominating the news cycle, and we continue to observe all social distancing protocols here in Studio C. Our guest this morning joins us from Washington, D.C. Congressman Jim McGovern has served Massachusetts since 1997, winning re-election last month. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be with you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for being with us here on this Sunday. How optimistic are you that another compromise relief bill will be sent to President Trump, hopefully before the end of the year?
Well, I'm optimistic. I mean, we've been working very hard in the House trying to come up with various alternatives. And as we speak, there's a bipartisan group in the House and in the Senate trying to work out even a compromise that hopefully get broad bipartisan support. The challenge we have, quite frankly, is one man, Mitch McConnell, who refuses to schedule anything for a debate or vote on the Senate floor. And if he can just move out of the way and let the members, Democrats and Republicans, work their will, we will get a compromise and we will get relief to the American people.
Of course, cities and towns are very eager to see more money, but I think a lot of folks are more concerned about how likely there will be direct checks for individual taxpayers, either through unemployment or otherwise, and small businesses with, more closings and the unemployment rate that's rising at this point. How likely are those?
Well, in the Democratic version of a COVID relief bill and in the bipartisan compromise, there are direct payments to individuals. There's also more money for small businesses and our restaurants, as well as more money for cities and towns that are cash strapped right now and have enormous expenses that are piling up. There's also some relief for people who are struggling with food insecurity, which has become a major problem in this country. It always was a problem, but now over 50 million Americans are food insecure or hungry, and we need to address that immediately.
Congressman, do you think the Trump administration made a critical mistake this summer, passing on those 500 million extra doses that Pfizer offered for its vaccine? Of course, we had a lot of promising news on the vaccine front this week.
Well, I do. But look, the Trump administration has mismanaged this entire pandemic from the very beginning. I mean, the delays, the denials, the lack of leadership has been deadly. And as we are gathered here today, close to 300,000 of our fellow citizens are dead, and millions of people have been infected. So, look, I'm anxious for January 20th to come so we can have some competent leadership in place who will come up with a comprehensive plan to make sure that everybody gets the vaccine.
The number one concern at this point is actually getting the vaccine to all of us. How confident are you at this point in the vaccine distribution system as you see it right now?
Well, again, I'm not particularly confident in what the Trump administration has put out there, but I am confident that President-elect Biden is putting together a team that will get this right. And look, everybody needs to get a vaccination. It needs to be free, and we need to get it out as quickly as humanly possible. And in the meantime, we need to continue to follow the guidelines by our doctors and health experts and wear a mask and social distance, wash our hands. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we need to still be vigilant in these coming weeks.
You sort of alluded to it, but is the transition between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, is it going to be a major problem for continued orderly distribution, if it's even orderly at the point that Joe Biden takes the oath of office?
Well, clearly, Donald Trump has not been anxious to cooperate with the president-elect's team. But I'm hoping that even he will understand that trying to mess up the works would result in more people dying. And look, ultimately, the distribution is going to be decided by the states, and we need to make sure that they have the funding to be able to get it to people they need to get it to.
So you don't sound very optimistic about these vaccines getting to us by the timetable that's been offered by the CDC and by others of hopefully getting it to most people by about March or April.
Well, I'm hopeful. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to happen. One is we need to have a plan that has integrity that will actually work, and the states are going to play a major role in that. Secondly, we need to provide the resources and the funding so that states can implement their plan. And that, again, that's part of this discussion that we're having on this COVID relief package is making sure that there's money available and resources available to make sure that it get to every single person. And again, I believe that this should be free for everybody as well.
Congressman, you mentioned January 20th. Do you believe that President Trump will attend Joe Biden's inauguration?
Yeah, who the hell knows, right? I mean, to be honest with you, I am just anxious to get this sad chapter behind us. I would like to think that he would show up. I mean, look, we need to find a way to turn down the heat and the polarization in this country. And I think Joe Biden is somebody who can do that. His whole life has been about working across the aisle, trying to build coalitions, trying to get things done. We need to move away from this toxic and polarizing political atmosphere and get down to a point where we're actually trying to get things done. You don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. I'm a liberal Democrat. I feel passionately about a lot of different things, and I'm going to fight for those things. But at the end of the day, I want to move the ball forward. And I would like to think that there are some thoughtful Republicans who want to do the same thing.
So do you think it would be better if President Trump did not go to Joe Biden's inauguration?
No, I think it would be better if he did, quite frankly, because it would be a signal that it's kind of that things are somewhat normal. I've long since given up on trying to figure out what Trump will or will not do. At this point, I'm focused on trying to get things done for my constituents, for the people of Massachusetts, and for the American people. We have a lot of challenges. We have a lot of big issues we've got to tackle. Let's start figuring out how we solve these problems.
Big news in the tech world this week. Facebook being sued by the federal government and just about every single state. Do you believe, Congressman, that its hold over social media, Instagram, WhatsApp, is strictly too much, too powerful?
I do. I mean, they have a monopoly, and that's not good for competition. It's not good for consumers. It's not good for the American people. Look, in 2016, Facebook, which again has a monopoly, knew that the Russians were interfering in our election, yet they took their money and put out all these falsehoods and misinformation. I applaud our Attorney General, Maura Healey, for joining with the New York Attorney General and filing suit on this issue. But I really do believe that people like Mark Zuckerberg are way too powerful, and it's time to re-examine the situation.
Are there other companies here that should be challenged, forced to divest? Amazon, Google, Apple? What are your thoughts on those?
Absolutely. I believe the answer is yes. And we need to, as we go to the future, we need to look at some of these companies and figure out how best to approach them.
Do you think that will actually happen? There will be more suits to follow depending on how this happens with Facebook?
I do.
And will you initiate anything, or are you working with anyone about it?
I'm sure the attorney generals will continue to file suit. But look, we ought to move away from monopolies. It's not in the interest of anyone. And again, I've watched what has happened with Facebook, and quite frankly, it's disturbing.
All right, more with Congressman Jim McGovern right after the break.